Buenos dias a todos. Very welcome, good morning to you all. My name is Jim O'Brien and I will be the moderator of this session. We will be using English because most of us, our first language is English. Pero si hay preguntas o cualquier cosa, se puede preguntar en español. Y vamos a intentar en hablar lentamente para ayudar al entendimiento. Y hoy tenemos un tópico muy interesante, es sobre el tema de la industria de agregados o de áridos del mundo y charlando de las debilidades, amenazas, fortalezas y oportunidades. So the theme of our discussion today is talking about the aggregates industry worldwide, its weaknesses, threats, strengths, and opportunities. So we, as you all know, the aggregates is a very big industry, about 40 billion tons globally, and it is very much an industry that is deep in tradition, very local because the quarries are in local regions, but at the same time it's a global, national and a global industry. And our associations represent the industry at regional, national and through gain at a global level. So, you know, we all know the challenges that there are in operating in our industry, the difficulty of getting permits, the long processes involved, and the challenges we meet in everyday operation. And so this is a session that is dedicated to simply stand back from the daily operation and to look at our industry, and we have real experts here around the table to look and see what are the strengths, weaknesses, threats, and opportunities. And maybe by bringing all of our different ideas together, we can form some central points, themes that will enable us to better focus as an industry on what our opportunities really can be, and thereby really help our industry to perform even better in a global context. As I said, my name is Jim O'Brien. I'm a former president of AggregatesEurope. I'm now president of GAIN, the Global Aggregates Information Network. And to take the panel from the end, Dirk Fincke is the Secretary General of AggregatesEurope, based in Brussels, a very long experience in the aggregates industry of Europe. He deals with all of the problems associated with meeting our legislators at a European level, and has huge experience to bring to the conversation. Then we have next Brent Morrey. He is president of the newly formed Aggregates Producers of Canada Association. And so he has a panoramic view of all the provinces, the 10 provinces of Canada, and is doing a great job in bringing together various provincial associations to act as in the national interest of the aggregate sector in Canada. Next in line is Libo, Mr. Fang Libo, who is president of the China Aggregates Association, the biggest association in the world with a production of 14.5 billion tons. So Libo will be, I'm sure, able to give us a helicopter view of all that is going on in China and the great work being done by the China Aggregates Association. Next in line is Guy Woodford, who is a journalist, and I think as such he can bring external perspective to the conversation here. He's editor of two versions, a magazine, Aggregates Business, both a European and an international edition. So he is very familiar with the industry, and I'm sure can bring very interesting insights to us. Next is Wayne Scott, who is Chief Executive of the New Zealand Aggregates Association. So going from the biggest association to the smallest in one jump, it still is a very important and very interesting part of the world. And they have a very open perspective. They have their own challenges, and they do bring very interesting insights to the world of aggregates. Next in line is Carlos Fernando Forero, who is Chief Executive of the Colombian Association, Asogravas, and he has a very long experience of the aggregate sector in Colombia with all its particular challenges and opportunities. And I'm sure he will bring fascinating insights into the parameters that affect operation in Colombia. And then moving to Diego Saraiva, who is a director of ANEPAC and of Brazil. So he will give us a very interesting oversight of another major, the biggest economy in Latin America. So we have a real worldwide perspective coming to this table. I'm expecting very interesting comments from them, and equally any questions from the audience when we get through the first part. And I really look forward to this discussion. The theme of the roundtable was looking at the threats and weaknesses, and then looking at the strengths and opportunities. So I think we'll first look, if you like, at the negative side. We'll look at the weaknesses and threats. And if everybody is happy to do that, we'll start, and I'll ask each of the panelists to make a comment as to what they see from their perspective as the threats and the weaknesses. And it's not just of the association, it's of the industry itself in their region, be it country or region. So maybe Dirk, I'll start at the far end and ask you to kindly give a 2 or 3 minutes chat on the, as you see it, the weaknesses and the threats of the European aggregates industry. Dirk.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jim, also for this very good introduction. I would start, and that's a European point of view. However, we as the aggregates industry, we are quite significant. In Europe, we are talking about 3 billion tons of aggregates produced and demanded every year. We have 26,000 sites operated by 15,000 companies, and that's quite a number, which not a lot of sectors could provide. However, we struggle for recognition. And in Europe, we have a Critical Raw Materials Act with a list of critical and strategic raw materials. Aggregates is not part of it. I know in New Zealand, you managed to be on that list of critical raw materials, but here in Europe, we struggle for recognition and visibility. And that sort of lack of visibility is also shown in the land use planning and long-term approach of policies and access to raw materials. We simply do not have priority when it comes to regional or national land use planning, and definitely not at European level. It's changing now, we're working on that. And the question is, why do we have that lack of visibility? And part of the problem is that we are not seen as part of the solution, which we are, but we think we still have to do a little bit more work on convincing policymakers that we can make a great, significant contribution to sustainable development. And this probably goes along with a bad reputation, because mining or aggregates extraction has an impact, which we do not deny, but the story doesn't end there. So, because we have during the operations and after the operations, a lot of very positive examples on what happens to the extraction sites. So that's my part of the weaknesses, and there's a whole list of weaknesses, but maybe to summarize, these would be the weaknesses. And that somehow translates also in the threats which you ask. There's a lot of uncertainty, and during the GAIN meeting, which I really learned a lot from, I also gave a short presentation on geopolitical changes, and that's very much part of that uncertainty I'm talking about. There's a lack of long-term policies and long-term thinking of policymakers. There's no readiness to take a risk as policymakers or authorities in charge of land use planning. Everyone wants to make sure that a project has absolutely no negative impact, or to sign up that someone needs to be reliable, it's a producer's responsibility, etc. So I want to be on my safe side if I say yes to a project. And that's a threat to our industry. It's also about the regulatory constraints. We call it death by bureaucracy, because companies struggle to do more and more, fulfill more and more legal requirements. And just a couple of days, yesterday I think it was, in the European Parliament, the European Commission initiative on simplification on environmental measures has been rejected in the committee in charge. It's a very tight majority, which shows that policymakers are still not ready to make life simpler for companies. Today we have the plenary session in the European Parliament on soil monitoring. We'll see how that goes. But what we definitely need is a change of the mindset in Europe. We need to see not the threats but the opportunities. And finally, maybe also part of the threat is the energy cost and the competition for land use. Simply, we see an ignorance of those who make the decision and cannot think about multiple land use. It's not just one land use, it's not a quarry only, but a quarry has a place for producing renewable energy. It can be a spot for recycling aggregates. It can be a production facility for concrete or asphalt. So I think this is the discussion we need to trigger a little bit more.
Thank you, Dirk. Interesting comment, death by bureaucracy, which is something we all are working with, I'm sure, in all our different regions. And it's a matter, yes, of getting around that threat that we have to work each day. Thank you, Dirk. Maybe next I move to Brent.
Yeah, Dirk, I don't know if you were copying my bullet points here, but we have a lot of the same issues in Canada. But maybe I'll just start by saying whenever anyone thinks of Canada, what do they think of? They think of a big country, it's very cold, and it's north of the US border. So I'll touch on each one of those. The first one is, yeah, we're very big. We have a lot of resources. Every rock you can imagine, but accessing those rocks has become much more difficult. And for quantifying that, in our three major provinces, the average from land purchase to permitting is between 7 and 10 years. And this is creating a lot of difficulty for the industry. The complexity to permit has gotten very much along the same wavelength of Europe, but some increasing complexities with who to consult. And so there's the federal level, there's the provincial level, and then there's the municipal level. And now an increase with consultation with our indigenous communities. And this has just created a level of complexity and uncertainty that a lot of the permit applications are not being processed, being abandoned, and we have a lot of applications that are growing and growing and growing with no decision at all. And as a result, it's just creating a concern and a threat that, particularly around where our demand is needed, that in pretty short time, we're going to be running out of material. So it's trying to communicate that with our authorities, that we need to have access to those resources. The second point, which I will say is a weakness for an industry, is yes, it is very cold in Canada, colder than here in Cordoba, that's for sure. But that makes our business seasonal. And so the construction season generally is a good six months, 7 months, and if you're lucky, 7.5 months per year on 90% of the country. So road building, bridges, concrete, there may be some work during the winter, but this condenses that significantly. Why is that a weakness? When we're talking about labor, we hear it all the time. How do we attract people to our industry? How do we attract people to when the weather's the nicest, you can't take any holiday? You have to work, not in the cities, but where our aggregate resources are located, in many cases 200 kilometers away. So this is a major challenge of ours, is the fact that we're seasonal and we have to work through that. And never really needed to advertise for our industry before because these were well-paying jobs, but we're certainly feeling that as well. So that's a second weakness, and threat is a little bit to do there. And the last point, which I mentioned, is we're bordering one country in particular, and I think everyone is aware of the challenges that we're facing in today's administration with the tariffs on our country, our largest trading partner by far, and this has created a lot of uncertainty and as a result, some inaction in terms of government spending towards our sector. And so this has been concerning. When COVID happened, in Canada, it had little impact on us, surprisingly, because the government continued to invest and support the construction industry. But here we're seeing a little bit of inaction. We've had a retraction in 2025 of 5%, and we expect a further retraction of another 5% in 26, just from governments, particularly at the municipal level, holding on to funds to see kind of the true impacts of these tariffs, which have impacted us at other levels throughout the organization.
Thank you, Brent. Very interesting insights. Libo, could I ask you to kindly give us some ideas as to what you see as the threats and the weaknesses, if there are any, in China?
Yeah, of course. I think for China, we all know that it's a very big market for the aggregates industry. But now I think the many threats is about the total amount. It's still very large, but the decline of the amount declined very quickly in recent years, especially since 2021, when the government have the policy to regulate the real estate industry. And now the real estate industry is still steady. It's still a lot of people think the real estate will still decline maybe several years. And the government don't want to save the real estate industry. So the total amount of the demand, it is a big issue, also the big threat of our aggregates industry. And another threat, I think, for the recycling aggregates industry in China developed maybe very well, maybe several years ago. But now, because the price of the primary aggregates declined so much, so it have a lot of impact of the recycling aggregates industry. So that also relates to the two weaknesses of the China aggregates industry. One, I think, for the permission, the mining rights permission in China is very easy to get contracts with so many other countries. So I think we also want to do a lot of work to maybe the permission system of the mining rights should be optimized to balance the supply and the demand, because the supply still grows that will bring a lot of problem for the industry. Also, I think for the hard part, we did very well in China, but for the soft part, just like the legislation, regulation, the system, we still need a lot of things to do for the industry. And also, we need to find, maybe learn from European or other West countries how we are to ensure our recycling aggregate industry also in a very good or sustainable way in the future. I think that is the many two threats, and also two weaknesses now in my mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Very interesting comments, Lipo. And quite extraordinary that you have the problem of too easy permitting. Okay, those permits are given.
That's also a problem. Too fast, too easy to get is also a problem.
Against very strict conditions, I know they are, but that you can get them quickly and easily. And you see that as a threat. That is really interesting. But
because the balance is, it's good. So too fast is also a problem. Yeah.
Thank you. Guy Woodford, please tell us from your outside view of the industry, what do you see as the threats and weaknesses of our industry?
I think the obvious place to start, being a journalist and editor of global magazines, communication is absolutely key. Selling the industry in the right way, the positive way, all the great work that's being done, which is too often not sung about. Perhaps some of that is people not knowing who to go to, what vehicles, what trade media and the relationships with national media. And then there's the sort of halfway. I think more can be done, trade media, national media, in engaging with the industry, getting a bigger understanding of it. Not just go for sensational headlines, which you often get in the national media and global media. Not so much in the trade media that actually is embedded or should be embedded in it and can communicate positive messages, as well as being a critical friend when necessary. So communication is absolutely vital. And, I've seen really good examples here with Áridos, a very good association, very active Spanish regional association. And they've produced some really cracking magazines. I've got a couple of examples here. You can see them. Now, how to communicate to under 8 kids about our industry. This is a pretty good way of doing it. I mean, it's engaging, it's colorful.
Yeah.
Brilliant stories, being told in sort of comic strips. This is the sort of thing that, you could do an older version of it for, 12, 13, 14-year-olds with a proper story. It's just, this is a great way to engage with them. There's creativity, there's clearly some imagination that's gone into this. And it's brilliant. And I think it shows what can be done. If you think outside the box, how do you sell the industry? Obviously, I come from originally a newspaper background, print newspapers, but increasingly, and whilst I was with there, the power of pictures as well and the photography. And as I've become a trade media editor, working closely with magazine designers, working closely with photographers and videographers, I see the power of the visual too. And I think in terms of a weakness, it's the industry and its various associations and bodies is embracing the power of the visual alongside the power of the word. As a great reader and someone who loves words, maybe it was hard for me to say that 15 years ago, but not now. I think you need both, and I think don't be scared of using media and engaging with people like me to tell the story, and don't think you have to do it by yourselves. We're all professional journalists. We can help tell the story. The amount of companies that I work with, and when you say, this is what I'm looking for, and there's sort of horror, like, this is so much work, and then you explain to them, no, we can do this, let's meet halfway, let's talk, I can come to site, or I can do all this with you, or my deputy can do this. It's a two-way thing, and don't be scared of communicating, and don't be scared of reaching out to your trade media and developing relationships with national media and beyond that, because if you do that, you can communicate such a positive message
And I think that's so important. So turn the weakness into a strength.
Thank you very much, Guy. And interesting, you are precisely the person who can help communication.
Yes, come to me, please.
A good plug.
Yeah.
Wayne Scott, give us the view of New Zealand on, as you see it, the weaknesses and threats to the industry there.
Yes, thanks, Jim. As Jim mentioned, we're a very small country, 5 million people, but we do have an insatiable appetite for aggregate. We're about the third, I think it is, largest consumer of aggregate per head of population in the world, so we have a big demand for it. I guess the biggest challenge for us is around social licence. It's maintaining the growing expectations of our communities on our performance, and we've seen in the last 20 years those expectations have skyrocketed, really. Whereas people would accept certain things 10 years ago, they won't accept that practice anymore. And it doesn't matter whether you have a permit or you have conditions of your permit. Quite often in our communities, they expect more than that. So I think that's quite a challenge for us, and it's a challenge maintaining that growing level of expectation, because it's not just setting a new level, it continues to grow. We have a reasonably large Indigenous population as well, and their expectation, I mean, to be fair, they haven't been treated all that well in our country over 200 years. So they have some gripes, no doubt about that. But their expectations are also growing, and a number of them have ownership of the land in which we want to quarry. So dealing with them is quite a challenge as well. I think the other thing I'd just like to comment on is that there's a rhetoric or a belief in a lot of people today that we can replace aggregates with something else. Some of that comes from the circular economy debate, I think, and the belief that that aggregates are truly circular, we can keep using them over and over again, which we all know is not possible. And certainly in our country, I think that a big chunk of our population believe that we could just do without aggregate. Even though we have this huge demand for it, we could actually just do without it because we could use other things. And I was asked by a politician a couple of years ago if it was possible to build roads out of timber. And I said to her, well, I'm sure it's possible, but have a go and see. So I think managing that, and some of it's communication that Guy mentioned, and making people understand that there is no substitute for aggregate is quite a challenge.
So it's the perceptions from outside keep getting stronger and stronger.
That's right.
And even if you are operating to all your permits, they still want even less, interference with their life. And there is, as you say, the almost expectation you can use something else other than aggregates. Okay, very interesting. So I'll move, please, to Carlos Fernando Forero to give us your insights as to what you see in Colombia are the main threats and weaknesses of the industry in Colombia.
Thank you very much, Jim. Buenos días a todos. Lo primero, quiero agradecer especialmente a la Federación de Áridos y a César por esta invitación. In terms of weakness and the threats for the industry in Colombia, we see various for our own condition. First, unfair competition. Unfair competition based basically upon tax evasion. This is an industry with very low prices, which is another weakness, I would say, with very low margin. But if you add that tax evasion, which in the case of Colombia it's 19%, is introduced to the final price, you are, as a formal and legal operator, in trouble. The second weakness in our country
or region, I would say is we are extremely dependent on road transportation. Almost 95% of our aggregates, 140 million tons a year, are moved by road transportation. Of course, we have very difficult geographical conditions, so that would increase the final price of the aggregates. In some places, you could get double or triple the final price because of the transportation. The third one could be access to the financial system. Not only in the aggregate industry, but in the mining sector is very difficult, especially the green capital. Low political visibility, I don't want to go into the details, and negative public perception, as my colleagues just mentioned. In terms of the threats, probably the main one is that it's a very cyclical industry, so we depend on the demand of housing infrastructure and on the government policies. In the case of Colombia, we have no policy on infrastructure, no policy on housing at all right now, so we are in the very low part of our economic cycle. Climate change or climate variability, and I mentioned that because 50% of our aggregates comes out of the rivers. So when we have the rainy season of floodings, it's really complicated to get into the rivers. Another threat we see is the long-term survival of family-owned business. This is the third generation. And sons and daughters or granddaughters, they don't really want to work anymore on the industry of their grandparents. Another one is the trend that we see in countries like Colombia is the large cement and asphalt companies are leaving the business. So we are a little bit afraid that those could reduce the standard of the industry. It's not that the small and medium size are not doing well, but of course it's a little bit different if I compare with the cement and asphalt companies. And last but not least, the unexpected change in tax legislation in the country. Thank you.
Fascinating series of challenges and threats that you have, that you work with on a daily basis. And interesting your comment that some of the cement and asphalt companies are going out of aggregates, whereas one would hope in many countries they like to have more vertical integration, but obviously they see it as problematic to integrate aggregates into their businesses. And we found the same, for example, in India when we visited recently, that the industry is so complicated and small and fragmented that the cement companies and really are afraid to get involved, which is to the detriment of the aggregate sector because there's no motivating force to become more authoritative, better organized.
Low prices, low margin, compared with the cement, the asphalt infrastructure.
Yeah.
So you have to decide which one
you focus on, yeah. Very, very interesting, yeah, very interesting. Diego, last but not least,
okay.
Saraiba, please tell us from the Brazilian perspective, what are the main threats and weaknesses of the industry in Brazil?
Well, thank you, Jim. Thanks. I would like to thank the organizers for the invitation to be here. Good morning, everyone. I would say that, being the last one to talk, we could do a short list of what everyone said.
You've nothing left to say.
Yeah, no, I do have some things, but yeah, the problems are pretty the same everywhere.
Yeah.
What I would say, we have a continental country. We are 17 times the size of Spain, so it's a really huge territory. I would say that it's very different among the regions. So we have the southeast of Brazil, a richer region, and the northeast, a completely different situation, very poor. And of course, the market has its own characteristics depending on where you look at. I can say that from what I can add to what was said here, first, it's a very fragmented sector in the whole country. So I would say that 95% of all the sand companies and about 85% of all crushed stone companies are small or medium-sized. So this creates a lot of problems in terms of being able to invest in technology, modernization of the operations. In addition to this, we have a very complex regulatory framework that those small companies with very limited financial capabilities have a very hard time to face. So we have from one side a regulatory framework that's being each day more strict, and we have on the other side those companies having a hard time to comply with all those regulations. In the end of the day, this ends up turning into some informality because, you know, when you can't comply to all the rules, people just start to not obey one or other regulation. And in addition to this, we would have unfair competition because, you know, the ones who are trying to follow the rules, they end up being somehow penalized. You know, we have a very limited public understanding of the industry as a whole. Our material is considered as something granted, so no one really cares whether you will have the supply of aggregates, except for very rare occasions where you have peaks on the infrastructure investments and you, I wouldn't say you end up without the product, but prices go up a little bit due to this high demand, and I would say the lack of ability of the market to adequately supply it quickly, right? But unfortunately, this is rare. This doesn't happen very much, but that's the time when we are remembered by authorities. Mm-hmm. We also had a very big problem that rose significantly social and political pressure on the sector due to the two major tailings dams accidents we had from big iron companies in Brazil. Mm-hmm. And this put significant pressure on the aggregate sector as well. As most of you know, basically in the production of sand, we do use some much smaller structures of tailing dams, and you know, the regulatory framework around those structures, they became so strict that I can say that today it's almost impossible to maintain those structures in operation. So the company I work for had two of them in operation, and we had to shut them all and invest in alternative technology to clean the water in order to be able to continue to operate. Finally, as Carlos mentioned about Colombia, we are very dependent on road transportation. We really do not have any other means to make our product go to the market. And due to resources sterilization, to mining sterilizations, I would say that some big cities are starting to buy the product from far. So São Paulo, for example, I would say that maybe half of the sand we consume in the city comes from 150, 200 kilometers away, mm-hmm. which makes about 3/4 of the product final price really is completely related to transportation. So it's also a very, it's a worrying scenario. And the thing is, we have space to build railways. Of course, we do have some, but they do not transport, except for very rare situations, they do not transport aggregates. We have rivers that could be more used to this, and ends up that we not take advantage of that. So I would say that definitely logistics is another great weakness we have. I think that it's pretty much this, very cyclical market as well as in Colombia. We are 200 million people today in Brazil, and our market has reached 2024 about 608 million tons, about 3 tons per capita, which is unfortunately really low. I would say that considering what we need to build in terms of infrastructure and all other things, we have a very underestimated market, unfortunately.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you, Diego, and thank you to all of the panel for outlining a myriad of threats and weaknesses. But let's now try to look at the positive. What can we do about it? And maybe to give, I'll ask each to give comments, maybe more brief ones, but to allow time for any questions from the audience also, to give just your main views on where the best opportunities and strengths are of our industry in your region. And maybe again, I'll start with Dirk, if you could kindly give from a European perspective, what are the opportunities and the strengths so we can change things for the better?
Yeah, thanks Jim again. I'm very much an optimist. The glass is half full, not half empty. And I will promise Brent not to read from your notes.
Yeah.
So I mentioned the figures at the very beginning, 3 billion tons, 26,000 sites and 15,000 companies, and most of them actually are SMEs, which in our case are very innovative as well. They have very good ideas, family-owned companies in Europe. That's the pillar we stand on when it comes to our economy. But we have a solid foundation. We are literally everywhere in Europe with these 26,000 sites. So we can supply on a local basis. And the question is not whether we need aggregates. The question for us is where we get the aggregates in the most sustainable way from. And so that is something we discussed as well recently, that we should no longer be in a situation to reply why we need aggregates. There's water, air, and aggregates. These are the basics of our lives. So if we manage to get there, then I think we can focus on really the sustainability of the extraction. And that leads me to the point that we have the great strength to be compatible with the environment. Aggregates extraction makes a fantastic contribution to nature. And then I go to the opportunities, because when we realize that we have that compatibility with nature restoration, in Europe we have a nature restoration law. And we have supported that law because we know as the aggregates industry we can be part of that solution. We have a concept in Europe which is called temporary nature. So if you have in a quarry an area which you can leave at least for 1 year untouched and operate in another corner, and you leave nature to throw, and nature is not a threat to your operation by an agreement, then this is what we call the temporary nature concept. What we see as another opportunity, and not as a threat only, is a rational approach to circular economy. If we all realize that we do need aggregates, and that the circular economy as best can maybe provide 20% in Europe to the total demand, then it means that the 80% needs to come from primary resources. And if that is accepted, then we can go to the next step, which is the necessary investments. And that's an opportunity now in Europe. Again, we keep saying in infrastructure, but also in brackets now in military infrastructure. And that all can be done also with not only climate change policy, but adapting to climate change. That's another opportunity in Europe where, unfortunately, we are facing extreme weather conditions, rising sea levels, and coastal cities need to be adapted to that. And you need massive amounts of aggregates for that. And again, this should be recognized as well. In Europe, we need to prepare for many things, not only weather conditions, but also the geopolitical situation, which I mentioned. And renewable energy, I could mention renewable energy in the threats, but it is an opportunity for us as well. It means reducing the dependency on supply of energy and cost of energy, because that used to be, and it still is, a big challenge in Europe, the cost of energy. So if we are allowed to produce more renewable energy on site, then this could be a great opportunity for our sector.
Thanks, Dirk. Brent, could you outline where you see the main opportunities and strengths of the industry are?
Thanks, Jim. I mean, the opportunities are enormous, actually. And it's in these types of venues that we're continuing to learn from everyone who's seated up here, facing the same challenges, but are at different levels of maturity and advancement. The note-taking just continues. There's so much we can do. And so learning from our colleagues and how they're addressing it has been high. I mean, a strength for us in Canada is, we have a very high aggregate consumption ratio. 400 million tons, 10-to-1 ratio, and this is actually a down year. Those ratios have been between 10 to 12 to 1 for the last 2 decades. So this is a lot to do with the northern climate. The roads and bridges don't last as long. We need to rebuild them, resurface them. In a sense, that is a little bit of a circular economy, and we try to put as much back into the roads as we can. But that's an opportunity that's very, very clear for us is in regards to recycling specifically. We consume over 400 million tons of aggregates, and less than 5% of that is recycled. With the exception of maybe a sub-base material, which is well below the roads, a low-graded product, it is still a challenge for us to convince our clients and our governments that this is acceptable material to use. So there's definitely opportunity there. But the high aggregate consumption is with a growing population. So there's still investment being done, maintenance that needs to be done, and so we're an essential industry. And a lot of the same dialogue there is we're trying to get in front of the authorities and governing bodies collectively with others in the construction industry, whether it's road builders, asphalt producers, other construction sectors for natural resources, because we may employ 25 to 30,000 people regularly, but the construction industry is 1.5 million people in Canada, 7% of our population, and for almost every form of construction, you do need aggregates. This is a very, very important business, so trying to communicate that in a better fashion is an opportunity. I mentioned labor being a challenge for us. We have been having a declining birth rate in Canada, like many countries in the world, for a number of years. So our growing population is very much dependent on immigration. And so how we target new Canadians and immigrants to our industry is probably the biggest pool of potential, and not necessarily the young We definitely are targeting young in the schools and everything, but how do we target Canada and immigrants to our industry is a critical focus and opportunity. And the last thing I'll mention in regards to climate change, it's very real. Wildfires and flooding has hit our country to levels of once in 100-year events are now happening once every few years. So the industry has responded very, very positively to this, but it's been reaction and reactive based as a result. So how can we be more proactive to climate change? Kind of falling in line to what Dirk mentioned earlier is a great opportunity for us, and to get our improved image out there as part of the solution.
Great, thank you, Brent. And Lipo, where do you see the strengths and opportunities in China?
Okay, I think there are maybe two key strengths in China for Chinese aggregates industry. And the first, of course, is about the total amount is very large. And not besides the total amount is very large, also the manufacturing aggregates. The percentage of the manufacturing aggregates is very large. So there will have the economics of scale. And also in recent years, many new very large quarries aggregates production line are newly investigated. It brings a lot of new money, new capital, and also a lot of new talents. All of these will bring the innovation and also other technology used in China with this economics of scale that will bring so many advantages, also so many strengths in China. And the second strength maybe is the complete industrial chain. That is not only in the building material, from building material to the infrastructure construction, because the infrastructure construction ability of Chinese companies did very good job in the past. And also the equipment manufacturing supply chain developed so well. Building, there are so many practice in the aggregates production. So this, the new, nowadays more and more infrastructure is planned to be built in west of China. So the west of China, the condition is much harder than the east of China. So in west of China, the instructions, the lead of the infrastructure about aggregates is much strict, much high quality needs compared with the past. So, but because of the equipment manufacturing supply chain is also very, very complete and also very well developed. So for this equipment manufacturing chain, they can also solve the problems, solve the needs, require the higher standard, higher quality needs from the infrastructure needs. So the supply chain, I think, is the second strength. For the opportunities, I think there are many opportunities. One, the first is we call the high quality development. That the concept now repeated so many times in in China right now. For the government, we couldn't always in a very rapid speed just for the quantity expansion. But we should shift from the scale growth to the quality enhancement. That will influence, especially in the traditional industry. So that is maybe the common sense in China that will bring a lot of different, especially for aggregates industry. There's so many, I said, so many capital, so many talents, and so many innovations. So we can just shift from the quantity to the quality. And the second opportunity is now the transformation transformation in green and digital technology. It have some acceleration. The speed is faster than what we thought before, because the green and the digital transformation is not just meet the policy requirements, but also the cost nowadays is very, very cheap. So for any complaints, any single person that just prefer for the green and more digital solution, it can bring their cut cost and just as mentioned before, the competition of the price is right now very competitive. So many companies, they just driving by the market force to use more green and digital technology. It will have just as the wheel turn faster and faster. I think that will bring a lot of opportunities. And the third one, just in recent times, the 15th five-year plan are discussed in Beijing right now. So on this top-scale plan, we will combine for every industry how to coordinate, especially for the combination with traditional industry and high technology like combined together. And we also have to, during every 5 years plan, we should have a lot of investigation. What are the real problems right now we're facing in the industry? How would we solve it? So through the 5 years plan, we will have a lot of discussion and then solve the problem. That we are also, sometimes it is on pressure for the total industry right now. But when we have this plan, we know every problems, every challenge, it is also opportunity when you have the plan to solve it. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we know from our GAIN meeting that China has transformed so quickly from 10 years ago.
Yes.
Very old technology, very rapidly into modern. And you are now really leading, in my view, the world in terms of development of machinery, expertise, plant layouts and sizes of units and so on. And another advantage you have is that most of the aggregates in China are transported by river. Isn't that correct?
Yes. So that is also opportunity. I think that is on the green policy, the green transformation. So not just about for the green mines that you should to recover many older mines, you should to turn them into green. And every mine, when they just to lead to especially for the how to say to recover the old mines, different mines, it will have relationship with aggregates industry. So and also for the production, it need be under maybe more digital and also more efficiency, and especially for the transformation nowadays many the transportation of the aggregates now use maybe non-belt conveyors, also with the electricity trucks. Now this also developed very well. That is also opportunity I think is stem from the green transition. And also it is not only just driven by the policy, but also driven by the market force, because it is very, the lifetime cost is much lower than for diesel trucks for the transportation. So just as Jim mentioned, for the last decade, there are huge, I think for aggregates industry is just a very compact in last 10 years in China, from very traditional to maybe nowadays the most modern and almost the largest one quarries production lines of aggregates now is could be found in China. But in these 10 years, it will also have some shift from the premier 5 years and the recent 5 years, because in the premier 5 years is mainly driven by the need, because the environment policy is very strict since 10 years ago. So a lot of very small quarries all closed. So they are very unbalanced about the supply and demand, because a lot of very environmental friendly quarries be closed. So the price goes very high. When the price goes very high, a lot of investment come in, and they should build the very green and also very intelligent quarries. But after maybe 2021, because the total demand declines and all the quarries have been built, the capacity grows very, very, very much. Nowadays also the problem is different because the supply like this shift to this, but the way they should choose is just to use the green and digital solution.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. To keep moving, and I want to allow some time for the audience to come in, and particularly from the Spanish Federation, or to mention from the Spanish perspective what the strengths, opportunities, and I know you are doing huge things, so it would be good to mention them a little. But Guy, we'll move on, and I know I can predict your answer is going to be better publicity, better image for the industry.
Well, just touching on, I think I want a few sort of observations on opportunities. Obviously, a huge issue is getting the next generation to come into our industry. We're in an age where the green conscience and consciousness is rightfully front and center, but can we embrace that? You know, can we work with young people, work with the universities, work with the colleges, bring them in, look at all the great work that's being done in quarries, look at the wonderful restoration, the biodiversity work, sell the story, communicate the story, going back to the earlier theme, bring them in. Can we have some of the best minds, the best students coming in and working in a quarrying environment, making it better, helping do it, rather than shouting from the outside, it's not the utopia, the green utopia we want. Well, let's help shape it, whilst realizing the importance of access to materials, both primary and obviously quality secondary. Bring them in. And not just on the green side, on the digital side, you know, that the work that's being done, the sort of full digital site solutions, all this fantastic technology to improve, not replace people, to improve how quarries are working. Can we not get bright young things, you know, again out of our education institutions, work with them, get them in working with the digital side of quarrying aggregates production? You know, that's a huge opportunity. Again, it's a sell, it's how you communicate it, how you go out and show how they can shape it, how important they are. I think that's massive. And just some observations about opportunities, you know, out of a tough market. Obviously, you know, we well discussed the fact that global aggregates volumes production is going down. Obviously, some notable exceptions in countries, but generally it's going down. But what we are seeing from interviews I'm having with companies, majors and smaller ones, they're selling a lot more of the green product. So whilst their overall numbers are down, their percentage of low carbon or zero carbon products has gone up. And they're really putting a lot of emphasis into selling those products. And they can sell a lot more, partly because the buyers want to be green, want to be seen to be green, but partly because regulations are going that way. You've got to have more low carbon materials in your contracts, in your tenders. You've got to be able to show the complete, obviously, supply on your scope emissions, and having greener products enables you to do that and win contracts. Obviously, from a business side, you can charge more for a greener product because more's gone into it, you charge more. But then the awarding authorities, the contracts are worth more, so everybody wins. You know, the company's winning, the environment's winning, and you're still winning, and you're getting work. So I think that's a great opportunity, which is only going to expand. And from a machine manufacturing point of view, I've seen, again, there's less machine sales, outright new machine sales. But what I've seen, there's a lot more remanufacturing, a lot more machine rebuilds going on. And every OEM, pretty much every OEM, certainly on the majors that I spoke to, have seen a big growth in rebuilds. So a customer is saying, I can't afford to buy a new machine, but hey, I'll pay half the price for a premium rebuild. So they get a pretty much new as machine from their existing one with all the support, the servicing support. It's an attractive offer. So whilst you're not paying for a new machine, you have an as new machine with the service support. That's growing, and I think that's only going to grow. All globally. I mean, I've seen it in the Western markets, in European markets. It's starting to come in America, and it's certainly coming into markets like Asia and the Middle East, an element in the Middle East. So that's really interesting on that side. As there's the opportunity with AI, embracing it. I've seen AI being used to a lot more on predictive maintenance, so it's being used by some smarter quarries. They're bringing it in and they're able to predict when they need to do maintenance. It's flagged earlier. They can intercept issues earlier in their production cycles and deal with it. And also with the OEMs, they're also offering a lot more on the full technician support. So as quarries are seeing a lot of their expertise retiring and new ones coming up, but they're sort of learning on the technical side, they're opting for full service contracts. So there'll be one or more technicians will be based close to a site and service that quarry with a full service contract. So it's very good for the OEMs. They've got a regular income stream. So whilst they're not selling so many units, they're selling a lot more on the aftermarket and service support. That's notable, and that's only going to grow, I think, as we go forward as an industry.
Thanks, Guy. Wayne, what are yours?
Yeah, I think as a sector, our biggest strength is our connectivity. I think the quarry family is very strong across the world. We see it with the GAIN network. We see it locally with our neighbours, Fiji, Australia, those Pacific Islands. And it's really good that if I have an issue in New Zealand, I can pick up the phone and speak to someone in just about every country in the world. And I think that as a sector is one of our real strengths. In terms of opportunities for us in New Zealand, it's really around climate change and climate change adaptation. While we bask in the sun of Cordoba this week, our country's being battered with 200-kilometre-an-hour winds, torrential rain. Next week will be a good opportunity for our sector in New Zealand because we'll be rebuilding roads and power networks, and which is an occurrence that today happens 3 or 4 times a year. Okay. So yeah, adapting to climate change in New Zealand is going to be a real opportunity for our sector.
As somebody says, it's a good storm. It's going to bring good business. Yeah. Okay, Carlos, what do you see as the opportunities?
Well, apart from what my colleagues just said, I would add that we have a huge aggregate reserves in the country, not only rivers, but also on the mountains. Remember that after water, the second most used product is aggregates. So we need to have a lot of reserve, and unfortunately, we do have it. Local employment, of course, it's also important. You are a local industry, so you have local employment. And finally, in the strengths, we could help with what we call orphaned mining liabilities through sand and gravel reclamation. It makes good business sense to go to all those abandoned sites, get out the sand and gravel, sell it to the market, and at the end, reclaim the land. Opportunities, many, but I will just mention 2. It's a huge margin of productivity improvement, huge margin of opportunity of productivity improvement. And basically, we see that digitalization, automation, and systematization could help a little bit with this productivity improvement. And last, due to our geographical condition, remember we are in the corner of South America, close to Central America, the Caribbean, South America, and North America. We see a very interesting opportunity to export aggregates to that market, Central America, the Caribbean, but especially the south part of North America, the east and the west. It's a huge demand, or will be a huge demand, especially in the States. In the next 5 to 10 years, they don't have aggregates, especially in Florida and in California, so we could export from, not only from Colombia, but also from Central America to that market.
Thank you. And Diego,
Right.
for Brazil.
Okay. I would say that our main strength, as in Colombia, we have a vast, high-quality mineral deposits for all over the country. So I would say that there isn't a single metropolitan region in Brazil that would not have good quality aggregates to make their constructions. The point here is, of course, access to those resources, and mainly the ones that are close to that are close to those centers, they end up being sterilized by urbanization and all the things we already know. So I think we have another good strength, which are successful post-mining land reclamation cases to be shown off and to be used in order to give comfort to not only the society but also government authorities that the work is going to be done in a complete way. With this, I would like to say that we have a great opportunity here to create a more predictable and standardized regulatory framework, reducing uncertainty, knowing that we need to bring the good entrepreneurs to the market. We don't want the licensing process to be easy. We don't want it to be simple. We want it to be predictable and quick, so that you don't have any company that does not have the capabilities of operating and doing the job from the research to the reclamation as a whole, leaving bad examples behind, which unfortunately was what happened in the past. So we believe that, and we have been doing this in ANEPAC in Brazil. We believe that working closely with government authorities and the society can bring a big opportunity to modernize the regulatory framework we have and create a business environment where good companies, good entrepreneurs are the ones who are going to be operating on it.
Thank you. Muchas gracias. Estamos aquí en el Congreso de España, entonces es importante. Habías oído comentarios de todo el mundo, pero estamos aquí en el Congreso de España. Hay unas preguntas o unas sugerencias sobre el tema en España y espero que había unas ideas buenas para ayudar a la industria de Áridos en España. And I can, in fact, say, and I should mention it, that Spain is doing through the Federación de Áridos and Arrigal, Arrival, ANEFA, and Gremi de Riz are doing tremendous work to face the challenges, the threats, and create real opportunities for the industry, not alone in Spain, but also for all of Europe. And in particular, I would like to acknowledge the huge work that Cesar does and that Jaume does, as well as your other Spanish colleagues, in preparing guidance documents, the Áridos Neutros 2050, the looking ahead, and the guidance documents on water usage and on all the life cycle, recycling, biodiversity, huge amount of documents and guidance and really motivating the industry here in Spain to really excel in all of the things they are doing. And I hope that we still have 10 minutes left in this session. So please, questions.
I would like to make a comment. It's not a question. I will do it in Spanish, okay?
Muy bien.
Just for the audience. Bueno, nosotros en España lo que estamos haciendo, porque estamos muy integrados en AggregatesEurope y por lo tanto realmente estamos abordando los problemas europeos en primer segundo en que suceden, porque estamos participando en todas las task forces, comités, etc. Entonces nosotros en muchos de esos temas, no en todos porque somos más países y la colaboración es muy valiosa, pues intentamos tomar el liderazgo primero en la discusión política y luego el liderazgo cuando ya la reglamentación la tenemos ya prácticamente aprobada para intentar ayudar a la industria en Europa y en España. Esto es la práctica común. Por lo tanto, los desafíos que ha contado Dirk, que pasan en Europa, son los mismos que pasan en España. No tengo nada nuevo ahí, salvo que cuando hemos hecho nuestra estrategia Áridos 2030, hay dos riesgos que no son muy comunes, dos retos, los demás todos son idénticos, que no son comunes en Europa, y uno es precisamente la cuestión, estoy hablando del año 2022, la cuestión de la rentabilidad de las empresas. Obviamente no podemos hablar de precios, pero mirando los datos, los valores por tonelada en España son muy inferiores a los valores en la mayoría de países europeos y eso teniendo una normativa parecida y eso tiene unas raíces que todos conocemos, pero es verdad que ese reto en concreto que no abordamos en Europa porque no se plantea en la mayoría de países, en España se ha abordado desde el punto de vista de que la crisis de precios, de costes de producción ha llevado a una, digamos, una recolocación de los márgenes en las empresas. Por lo tanto, eso que era un reto en el año 2022 ha mejorado y es algo que es diferente. Y luego hay otra cuestión que cada vez se va dando menos, pero sigue existiendo y que también es una particularidad en España respecto al caso europeo, que es, digamos, la actividad irregular, ilegal o marginal, vamos a decirlo, y me explico. Las extracciones ilegales es algo que yo creo que todas las asociaciones perseguimos y de hecho ponemos muchas denuncias en cuanto algún empresario nos avisa de que en su entorno se ha abierto una explotación ilegal. Normalmente esto sucede por falta de vigilancia de la administración y por exceso de barreras administrativas que al final hace que sea más eficiente y rápido hacer una actuación ilegal pequeña para una obra concreta que el ir a pedir un permiso a la administración minera porque entonces tienes una pérdida de oportunidad. Esto lo vamos controlando cada vez mejor, pero es verdad que es un reto que está por terminar de resolver. Y luego en España y en algún otro país europeo tenemos la situación de la extracción de áridos en obra pública que está regulada en España, o sea, no es ilegal porque está regulada, lo que es irregular, vamos a decir, es el control del cumplimiento de las obligaciones de esas explotaciones respecto a lo que dice la legislación, que la legislación no dice que no deban cumplir la reglamentación que una cantera, sino que el encargado de la vigilancia y cumplimiento es otra administración. Y ahí tenemos un agujero que no somos capaces de resolver porque en este caso concreto las administraciones de transportes son muy, las administraciones de transportes pues son muy, me refiero al ministerio, al MITMA, etcétera, pues son muy poderosas y prefieren ir por esa vía que les abarata las obras que por la vía de pedirle el suministro a las canteras próximas. Esto es una pelea que no tiene fin. Yo llevo 32 años en el sector y todavía no hemos conseguido resolverla del todo, esperemos que sí. Y estos son los dos rasgos que son diferentes a lo que ha podido comentar Dirk, y por eso lo quería explicar aquí, ¿de acuerdo?
Muy bien, muchas gracias. Cesar outlined, and if you wish to add a little more, Carlos, the problems that are particular to Spain, if you like, and it comes again, like you mentioned, about the informal industry is always the challenge, the small local guy who...
I didn't realize you didn't
No. Hemos entendido bien. Well, I'll explain to the panel. Cesar was talking, or maybe you can do it, Carlos, even better.
Oh, there's basically 3 points. It's unfair competition, the low margin, the low prices, which is different in Spain, and same thing in Colombia, I guess in Brazil, in some other countries. So the low margin because of low prices, probably in some cases under the real cost of production. And the third one is what we call it in Colombia, I think that's the right word in English, is temporary authorization for civil works.
Yep.
So they are, of course, legal, but they have to have more control from the environmental authority, the mining authority, and especially the transportation authority. Again, it's legal, but they are kind of unfair with the mining title, with the producers that really have to comply with many more regulations than that temporary authorization.
Thank you, Carlos. ¿Hay otras preguntas o cualquier comentarios?
Hi, I would like to make a question to Mr. Wayne Scott. So, as it was already mentioned, you in New Zealand have declared aggregates as critical. So, as it was mentioned as well, in Europe, we are not considered critical, nor essential, or nor strategical. So, has it had any positive effect in improving permitting or social license, that declaration? Thank you.
Yeah, it's relatively new. So the critical minerals list came out in May. It was confirmed in May this year. We think that it will have a positive effect. We haven't seen any significant applications go through the process since we got on the list. But certainly talking to officials, we expect that it will, because we're now nationally significant. So we have a test in New Zealand called a gateway test, so that you can get permission to develop in areas that normally you would not get permission if you are nationally significant or regionally significant. So now that we're on the critical minerals list, we are nationally significant. So that means that we will have the opportunity to quarry in areas that we previously would not have had the opportunity to quarry in.
Okay, and any other questions, comments? I think we've had a fantastic discussion, and I think I really appreciate the truly international perspective that has been brought to this session, and that is, if you like, one of the benefits of GAIN, the Global Aggregates Information Network, that we have such a wide range of skills and knowledge of the industry that really we can bring, and hopefully it is helpful here in Spain as well. And it would be so difficult for me to summarize everything that has been said in the last hour and a half, but I think it's about industry image is really a predominant factor, and inducing and helping to create more confidence in economies to grow and construct and thereby use more aggregates. And I think our industry can be more confident about itself and project the better image, and really then be in a much better position to address all of the challenges that we face and turning these things into opportunities. So I would like to thank at this opportunity the Spanish Aggregates Federation for hosting this Congress, for welcoming us all, as well as their regional associations, Arrigal, Arrival, ANEPAC, and Aggregates, really done a fantastic job in this Congress, welcoming GAIN, the international group, and welcoming such a wide, over 1,000 people from the industry in Spain. That really says something. So I would really say huge thanks to all of the organizers of this event. And finally, thank you to a great panel for giving their views, and thank you for being a great audience. Thank you very much.